That one is by our boys over at Music Mainnet. You may have seen the retweet just like about an hour ago. They put together a remix of the Escape theme song, which is pretty legit. I'm not like a huge dubstep fan anymore. Definitely was in high school, but that song is actually, it slaps. So check out the retweet on the Neo Tokyo profile, posted just a few minutes ago. Proud to show off some of their work, and they put together that theme song as well. This show is now up on Spotify and YouTube, so you can check them out each week on those platforms. Last week was the first episode. This week, episode 2. We talked about some gaming topics last week. This week, we're going to focus on some AI as well as the current events of the past week. So I'm excited. We've got some cool guests lined up. One more joining us here from Shrapnel, and then Zehi and Felix are co-hosting with me. I'm Firestorm, by the way. I know I'm on the Neo Tokyo account right now. So Zehi, I think we're going to kick it off with some current events if you want to go through that.
Yeah, most of these subjects we're going to go over now are covered daily on our Neo Tokyo news. Just looking around what's going on, the crypto market has been pretty sideways and boring as it's been for a while. Ledger is releasing some new products and being dubbed the Apple of crypto. Something to check out. I don't know if anybody's got to try their new products yet. Yuga, of course, is busting right along and their ecosystem with their founders being super active, promoting the other deeds. And I guess staking just went live for ApeCoin and whatnot. Artifact, RTFKT there, that ecosystem seems to be a bit in shambles as the project is trying to step up and address all this FUD that's come up around their repeated expansion of their ecosystem through new airdrops, which seem to be dropping the value of their collections and causing some of their community to get a bit upset. Looks like Telegram is going to be building their own crypto wallet, which that's a pretty interesting one there. SBF, of course, continues in the news, although it's kind of not something we like to talk about too much. It's getting kind of boring. But supposedly he admitted some fraud on tape. You can check out CoffeeZilla. It's got some threads and some videos about that. Local Neo Tokyo ecosystem, Codebreaker, has been all the hype and all the attention has been there for this last week. It's been a lot of fun. We've all been gathered in the public VC, so people who are not citizens have been jumping in and helping and getting to interact and get a real feel for what Neo Tokyo is all about and the amazing networking opportunities and good times and good connections that we have there. It's a great opportunity for people to check out Neo Tokyo. And I'm hoping that, at the end of this event, we'll get Firestorm to drop, some hints, some news, some maybe updates as to what's to come. So we'll circle back to that before we close up at the end of the hour. Then we did hear something here, Firestorm. You just mentioned something about Hyros sale. You wanna update us on that one?
Yeah, that was breaking news. Somebody just pulled up the story for it like an hour ago in the Neo Tokyo Discord, but it looks like our man Alex Becker just sold his company. So I think it's at 110 million or 115. I'll have to pull up the TechCrunch article, but both of our founders making huge moves this week. Becker just sold Hyros. Elliot just launched Gigamart, his new platform. So we're definitely a proud community right now. Proud of them. Proud of everything going on in the community as well. So it's an exciting week for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's definitely been a big focus in the news is all the NFT marketplaces coming up. It looks like Blur.io had a big airdrop and they have busted into second place in the overall NFT marketplace volume, just over X2Y2 at about 22,000 ETH volume over the last week. So I don't know, that might be the start of another airdrop meta that's happening with a lot of these projects.
Do you have the volume from OpenSea? I'm curious what the actual comparison is between those two.
Yeah, OpenSea is 43.5, so they're just about halfway there. So they're definitely challenging them. If you put Blur and X2Y2 together, you basically have the same volume as OpenSea. LooksRare is just a little bit behind at about 20.5. Yeah, OpenSea's time as the monopoly seems to be coming to an end. And we're hoping that
But the real question
Gigamart.
is,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, the real question is, though, is what if that data actually looks at wash trading versus non-wash trading? Because I think that's the other thing of like actually recognizing the quality of marketplaces. But, that's also another interesting debate as well.
That's a great point. You're saying that most of the wash trading is going on more on OpenSea or on these newer ones?
Definitely going on pretty much any of these networks, right? Any marketplace that incentivizes rewards for trading activity and allows for a 0%, fee, that's essentially ripe for any kind of wash activity, right? Because it's an arbitrage play for the traders. So what you've seen is, this happened initially on Looks Rare when they initially did their drop. Similarly, we're seeing that on Blur as well. And you're also seeing it even on GameStop's marketplace. If you look at the actual data and activity, we did a little bit of analysis earlier. It's like almost 82% of like the activity is wash trading on GameStop's Immutable X's network as well. So it's just one of those interesting things of like, what is the actual metric you're looking at for a KPI perspective to understand the quality of a marketplace? But don't get me wrong, Blur's making an impact in a real manner. The question though is how real it is probably something that needs to be investigated even further.
Dig deep in the data. That's what we need. And then, of course, we got the Gigamart launch, which is people have been raving about all over Twitter. We had a nice article on that yesterday. If any of you guys got to check that out and give any reviews as to what you've seen with Elio's new big project here?
Yeah, I was able to play around with it a bit. He also had sent me a demo or two pre-launch just to check out some of the new collection features. I'm most excited about the analytics pages, and like the custom dashboards you can build look really flexible, and you can kind of, pull up the different data that you care to see. And a lot of the other platforms don't have that customization. And then as far as collections go, the big use cases there are announcements, airdrops, collection chat, and then holder collection chat. Communities can actually talk to fellow holders in that chat. You can talk to prospective holders in the non-holders chat. So some of those features are unique to Gigamart, and other marketplaces haven't capitalized on them yet. I don't know. So we'll see how it turns out as far as usage goes, but there's definitely some good ideas there that Neo Tokyo plans to take advantage of. While we're
Good
at
stuff.
it, Nick, we never did an intro, so why don't you introduce yourself before we get in too deep?
No problem at all, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm Nick. I also go by Saint. I'm the founder and CEO of Tribe. We're working on a handful of gaming projects, including our debut project, which is the Lost Realms universe. We've broken that product into a really interesting experience across multiple acts. And the first act, King's Oath of the Lost Realms world, is going out this month. So we're really focused on building like interoperability, composability, and honestly, deeply interactive games, and thinking through it as a brand first project. Really come from a deep gaming background and a Web3 trader background as well. So really excited to dig into a lot of these ideas with you guys. Thanks so much for having me. And as you guys know, Neo Tokyo is one of our interoperable partners in our game as well. So we're really excited to kind of collaborate together as well.
Well, what do you think? We jump into the topic of the day?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, we're looking at, there's been a lot of AI products coming available recently. There's so many of these AI art project products that, a lot of people have been making use of. And then we just got this ChatGPT, which has come up this last week or so. And so we wanted to take a look at how will all this AI affect the Web3 space, Web3 gaming. I even started it off by just asking ChatGPT about that exact question, and it gave a very quick and very thorough answer. Of course, it says, it's hard to exactly say how it'll affect the Web3 space, but it did give a list. I'll just briefly touch on it. And it said, number one, improving the performance and efficiency of decentralized networks. 2, enhancing the security of decentralized systems. 3, creating new decentralized applications and services. 4, facilitating the creation of more intelligent and sophisticated smart contracts. Overall, it's likely that AI will play a major role in the future of the decentralized web, and will be interesting to see the ways in which it impacts the Web3 space in the coming years. Of course, it gave even more detail to that. It's a very impressive product. If anybody hasn't tried it, go check it out.
We need to just use that for the whole show next week. Just read the script of answers from the AI. It'll sound better than what we can come up with.
Possibly, I think it'd be good to start off with looking at the positive, the beneficial aspects of what AI will be able to do to enhance Web3. I know, Felix, you're I don't know if you want to consider yourself an expert in this area, but you're definitely knowledgeable. It would be great to hear some of your thoughts to start us off.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, so yeah, I would definitely not call myself an expert in AI because I haven't worked with it that long, but I did do a fair bit of natural language processing before I went full-time Web3 over at Twitch and Amazon, and it's definitely a very, very interesting subject, and ChatGPT is definitely right up my alley. One thing I would say that is very, very interesting to see is going to be how similar to what Alethea did when they launched their NFT collection for training AI is how much this will actually affect the evolution of AI, I would say, because now that we have so many people interacting and giving feedback to how the AI is performing with its answers, it might skyrocket the speed at the AI can actually evolve and move forward as well.
Right on. Saint, do you got any general thoughts to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about the positives, right, I think it's important to understand that AI in its current state is now at a transformative point to really impact creators. And what we get really excited about here is that if you're a builder, a visual creator of any sort, you should already be utilizing the consumer-friendly AI tools that with just simple prompts, you're able to get really, really amazing outputs. This is across Stable Diffusion and Midjourney and Lensa. If you're trying to look at visual AI tools, really, really powerful stuff. So how would you use one of these tools? Well, what's exciting there is it can help you with concept art creation. Literally, we've been doing that as well within our own project at Lost Realms and the King's Oath. A lot of the art we initially started with in the V1 started straight up as concept AI art that we then kind of took morphed and influenced into our own first party art. And it accelerated content creation by 75% in that timeline, right? And that's also really important if you're a designer who's non-visually creative, right? What you want to see, but you can't create it yourself. You could actually use these engines to give you that exact output. And the real skill that's going to end up coming out of this is who can actually write the right prompts right into these engines. That's the actual interesting skill, right? You have to put in prompts in the style of this artist, shot from this angle, recreated in this light. And if you can do that correctly, there's something really powerful there. So that's already where you're going to see the immediate impact of these AI consumer friendly tools on the visual side. And then I think similarly now with ChatGPT, you can now do this for all lore and storytelling, right? You could do amazing stuff with just a couple clicks and you get these outputs. And if you prompt it correctly, these AI engines also learn on the previous entries so that it could actually compound. And you could turn, ChatGPT's AI into an actual, storyteller for your entire brand. So I think those are probably going to be some of the near-term applications, but you're also going to see some really exciting long-term stuff where, there are going to be AI models to be able to train your assets. Those assets get better. Alethea's kind of taken the early lead for that. The real challenge in those kind of cases is how do you get the consumer to be interested in that? How do you get them to react? There's also another NFT project on Solana called Mecha Fight Club. They're also trying to use learning models there. I still think that's a little bit ways away before it actually gets interesting, but at least they're at a curious stage. But right now, if you're a content creator of any sort or a visual creator, you should already be using AI tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney and Stable Diffusion every single day.
You bring up a really interesting point, and it sounds like your team is already taking advantage of it, but the concept art side of things, that's super interesting to me. Jeff Treves, New Tokyo Citizen, one of our star artists, I just brought him up to the stage. It sounds like you might have some thoughts on the art side, Jeff.
Yeah, hey guys, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks for joining.
from an artist point of view, I'm following the concerns in the space, and I'm actually sharing some of the concerns, but at the same time, I'm trying to see through them. And I started animation around like 10, 15 years ago, and it was right during the transition from classical animation to 3D animation. And I realized at the time that a lot of classical animators were having similar concerns towards 3D animation. So I think there's a couple of things here to consider. I see the current version of AI is much like not something that's going to replace the artists, but it's going to serve as like stock footage websites, because stock footage speed up our production incredibly. In the past 20 years, we didn't used to have that. We used to cut stuff from magazines or maybe bits and pieces from other videos or sound files, which was very limited at the time. But right now we have like stock music, stock templates, stock images, vectors, whatever you want. And I think these are all stepping stones for us to create more advanced stuff that maybe we cannot even imagine right now. Because when you were doing classical animation, if you read books that are related to those times, everybody's going to admit that it was a very crude medium. Cleanup was very hard. Perspective was very hard, especially lighting was incredibly hard to do frame by frame with hand. But when we get to 3D animation now, we're watching some very extravagant stuff compared to those. I'm not comparing them artistically, but from a realistic visual perspective, definitely 3D is much superior. I think the prompt thing is very interesting, because what it comes down to, if these are going to turn into tools that we're going to be using to do more advanced art, they're going to need to have a lot more inputs and outputs, and they're going to need to be like pieces of Legos. So right now we have just one prompt. We can just like write a sentence or paragraph, and there's not other attributes that we can play with to shape these further. And from what I understand, it's just like scanning all art that was done previously and mixing them, matching them, and giving us some results. But I'm assuming that most of the time, some of those compositions are already thought by another artist, or some of the colors or some of the textures come from another painting. So it's perfectly fine, I think, to use them for conceptual art at the moment. And if you can, develop that, what you get from AI further, with your own talent, I think that's very valid too. But ignoring AI at this point, I think, is going to leave us behind. As artists, I think we can start thinking about how these prompts are going to diversify in the future, and what else we can do with this. I mean, what can we do further with this AI? And I found ChatGPT extremely interesting, because I write lyrics, poems, or articles sometimes, but I write much better, of course, in my own tongue, which is Turkish. And I can speak English, but I cannot be as concise or as poetic as I want. And I just fed some stuff that I wrote in English to ChatGPT, and I wanted to turn it into something more poetic, or something that's taken away from a novel. And it did a great job. And that means even if you know the language, like a second language, a little bit, you can start writing like a, local or something. So even though I'm a visual artist, I found ChatGPT a lot more interesting than the visual AI so far.
That's very, very interesting. And I love the fact that you're tapping into the AI and is not afraid of it, because I think one of the core things about AI, at least at this point in time, is that they are not supposed to replace any human or what they're doing. It's more about a tool that can help you improve in your craft as well, and develop further and take new approaches. So I really love hearing what you're doing there, to using both visual and also textual AI out there to help you with the creative process. So that's very, very interesting. Now we also have Francis here, better late than never. So Francis, maybe you want to mention something as well about AI, since you used to work a lot with that as well, and of course also introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone, Francis. I work with Shrapnel doing econ design, but my background is actually in kind of applying AI solutions to like kind of drones. So I think how swarms of drones interact with each other and coordinate, image recognition, any kind of autonomous solution, figuring out the best way to get from A to B with varying wind speeds and taking in that kind of telemetry. I completely agree with Felix in the sense of AI isn't something that's necessarily going to replace people. Not intelligent and creative people anyway. I think it's something where you can ask it the question of, hey, if I had some extra hands that didn't necessarily require any form of creativity and just had a simple task to do, you could get it to replace them. Whether that's through, making art or where you input prompts to kind of get an output. So customer service is one of those, but it's definitely going to enhance a lot of the experience and give a much more detailed and thorough kind of approach to these problems, where you'll get a lot better service on that regard, but then also in terms of kind of contextualizing and understanding information is such a huge thing that's happened recently, where that has uses in so many different areas beyond just what you've seen in ChatGPT and with the images. If you reverse the idea of images, where you enter a prompt and it tells you what it is, and you kind of have it the other way around, where you can input an image and it tells you what the prompts could be. That's pretty powerful as well when it comes to discovery of in contextualizing information to build data sets and the like. So I think what you've seen in the past few months has the power to accelerate AI and the development of AI beyond what we've seen in the past few years, and bring what used to take years to build these complex models and data sets to then take a few months at the most.
Gaming projects obviously have so many different areas of art that they have to worry about. They have sound, they have music, they have art and textures, and just so many different disciplines. And so that's why games are so hard and challenging and take so long to make. I'm curious, Nick, in your game development process, is that something that has come up where like you see that little shortcut using AI in the conceptual design stage, and that's something that you can just reallocate those time and resources to a different area because you're able to take that shortcut? I'm curious what the internal conversations have been around that on your team.
100%. Like, we're probably a little bit on the different side from on this topic, where I 100% know AI is going to take a lot of jobs because it already is doing it today, right? Not only within our organization to a certain extent, where you can reallocate the resources and make sure that different elements of use of time are being more effective with the right tools, right? That's usually what you want to be as an operator. I don't believe it's going to take over all of art by any means, right? You're going to need really great creative directors, really great storytellers. Like, these are still parts that give life to this, but recognizing it already today, not only am I seeing it, I actually know like very large game studios of 250, 300 people that are utilizing AI and have essentially stopped hiring for more of these kind of concept art roles, right? They could actually do a lot with the right AI models and 2 concept artists versus 10 concept artists altogether, right? And of course there's trade-offs in all of these decisions, right? But that's kind of what's really exciting about AI, is that it's creating new economic decision making on behalf of operators to choose where the investment of those resources are going. But in the end, right, it really, I think, comes down to the other element is like a lot of us wish to be creative and we're not. And that's what a lot of these AI visual tools are now doing. Like, if you just go play around with Midjourney, right, that's a really simple tool. It's actually built into Discord. You could play around with it really easily. Just add in a couple of the prompts or steal prompts from other people. It's all public in their Discord. It's actually really interesting. And you kind of start feeling like a god of an artist, even though you might have never done art before, right? It's like you could build these visuals and then you kind of go into this interesting rabbit hole of like, oh, how do I tweak this? How do I change this in the prompt? How do I take this input? And there's actually a lot of inputs now, especially if you know how to use stable diffusion, and it's a little bit of a cost on their credit model. You could actually start inputting like Genesis images that you want it to create variations off of. So what you're going to see is tons more inputs are going to come in. And when you add more of those inputs, those just become levers and tools to get the right creative output. And I'll tell you that already within our organization, we've used it. Actually, if you go into our Discord, 4 of like the first 7 images we ever posted is from Midjourney, right? And it became a fact for storytelling. And I think that's the other important thing is you have to understand for every creator, art has a different value prop and a different use and a different tool. Some that are very purist in the art side are absolutely going to want to do with a larger focus, a largest emphasis, and a larger touch. And that's great. We need that type of art. But what you're also going to see is individuals who see art as a medium and a tool to be able to use for marketing and for growth, right? So not only am I seeing people utilizing it for like concept art, where I'm also seeing AI being used for, it's like marketing art, right? It's like, oh man, I'm trying to do another visual. Like, who can I talk to my art team to be able to add on to this like flyer, right? Rather than talk to anyone, go in, put in 10 different prompts or an image, and you already have a custom new marketing art piece ready to go in less than 5 minutes, and maybe check the total cost of like $10 in regard to all the resources, when previously it would have taken you 4 or 5 different communications to get really right to the marketing artist what you need, maybe a couple of revisions on the marketing art to get right in the right size, and boom, there you see like almost $250 to $500 of capital may have been spent in terms of that conversation. So again, you don't have to look at art from just that lens of its cost effectiveness, but it would be ignorant for us to ignore that, right? Because there are huge cost advantages and time advantages. And when I really think about cost advantages, it's more about like time advantages of getting the solution right. What do I am trying to do as an operator? I'm trying to deliver delight to my audience. And what I've recognized is AI art, AI generated art is already doing some of that. And that's where it's already a useful tool, and hence why it's already taking allocation of human time resources to a certain extent that previously would have gone to, an artist, a concept person as well. So in the end, it's a balance there. And yeah, I think it's going to be an amazing tool. I think you're going to see full projects run only on concept art. I think there's going to be a huge opportunity to build like your own social game design where people have to create their own prompts, choose what the art they get out of that model, and then be able to mint it and do other variations of that. And you already see a few of those layers coming out. But people are going to start figuring that as well for NFTs. And I think it's going to be fascinating. Like, I'm all for AI art. I think the future is going to have a very large amount of AI art. And I think you're also going to see this for sound production, right? As you talked about it, like AI can actually create, really interesting sound outputs, if you know how to utilize the right stems and the right Genesis sources. Already some cool stuff happening there. And I think you're going to see it, of course, with copy and quite a few other variables that are going to be pretty meaningful there as well. So that's kind of how we've been seeing it. And if it's a tool that can help us deliver delight to our user base, it feels like it's something that we should be leaning into because that speed really does matter, especially in Web3, as we all know.
I was just going to say, like, taking a step back a little bit to the basics, for those who aren't as familiar, we've mentioned things like machine learning and training and terms like that. So I don't know, Felix, if you want to teach us a little bit, but like, what are those things and how does it work, and how have you seen that tech evolve lately since all these new tools and services have been released?
Machine learning, in essence, is a lot what it sounds like. You're essentially trying to have a machine learn, sort of like what a human does when it comes to early levels of learning. And what you can essentially view it as is you have at least in the most simple form of machine learning, which is so-called supervised learning, where you have what Francis mentioned earlier, a data set, a bunch of data that you want to have labeled with the right answers to. And what you then do is you have this usually huge, like GPT is, for example, a gigantic so-called neural network, which sort of mimics a brain and its functionality with neurons. But what you then do is you fit in these data points through it, and it spits out an answer. And what you then do is you compare that with your right answer, and you say either you're right or you're wrong. And based off of if the algorithm or the AI is right or wrong, it will adjust to learn and get closer and closer to that optimal
solution. The biggest problem with this is like what Jeff said before as well, is that it only learns about what it has seen. So if it's very, very good at, let's say, classifying horses and identifying horses in images, it's going to have a huge problem if it's never seen a dog before and see if there's a dog in the picture. So it only learns the small thing that we try to teach it. So with these like language models where they essentially process and learn from all types of written text that is out there on the internet and that has been indexed in books and all those things to build up some form of semantic understanding of things. It will cover that, which is huge when it comes to knowledge, because it's essentially all written knowledge we have. But if there's anything new there, it will still have the limitation of not knowing that because it's never seen it before. And that's where we're moving towards in the future, where we try to make it actually generalize and learn those things as well. But that's another topic for another time. So did that give a good context of what AI is and machine learning is?
Yeah, I think what a lot of us have been seeing lately on social media are, aside from Midjourney and the tools that we've had in Web3 here for a little while, like people in my family have been posting, you know, the Instagram filters and those PFPs where it's creating different versions of yourself. And it seems like a very concerted effort to get more images of human faces to me so that they can train their tools and train their AI. Is it something where the more images they have, the more accurate a human face they'll be able to create over time? Is that kind of how training works?
Yeah, I would say so. So to some extent as well, because you can also view a machine learning algorithm as sort of like the average of everything it has seen. So when you ask it to produce an output, it isn't necessarily going to give an exact replica of you, Firestorm, for example. There might be these so-called artifacts or some kind of difference there, because it won't be picture perfect always, just because it has so much things to learn and understand. But it's definitely true that it tries to learn a lot of these different concepts. For example, I know there's a website out there, I think it's like you didn't know this person exists.net or something like that. And that is actually a machine learning algorithm that generates random faces of people that do not exist. It's just a mishmash of different types of facial features that it has learned from all of the images of faces on the internet, which is kind of scary and kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think that connects to another issue that I want to mention. It's going to become increasingly relevant to differentiate what is real and what is not going forward, because I think that's a defining factor on how people are going to be looking at AI in the future. When you're watching a film, if it's based on a true story, it leaves a different effect on you. And if it's totally fiction, it leaves a different effect on you. That totally makes a difference. It's same with any art form. So I think artists are talking about the machine and the AI too much on internet these days, but they're not talking about human aspect of the equation. So if the machines are going to take some part of the art, then humans are going to need to be more human. We are most curious about each other's lives and stories that happen to other people that sound unbelievable to us, but at the same time makes a lot of sense just because they're based on facts. Are incredibly powerful, like Seinfeld. You know, you watch a scene from Seinfeld and it totally seems outrageous, but also seems totally plausible. So I don't, just like Felix said, they are imitating us right now, and they're doing it very good because they can watch like millions of us in a second, but at the same time, they're not living a life. And that's what we want to know. And I think it's going to be more relevant going forward.
I think it's interesting you say humans are going to need to get more human. When, you know, looking at society, we could say that humans are getting a bit more cybernetic with how much they interact with technology and how important technology is becoming in everybody's daily lives. I'd like to just shift the focus a little bit and get some perspectives on the potential dangers of AI and where we might need to be cautious and be thinking of or proactive in not succumbing to potential scenarios that could be negative on society. One of those has been mentioned a couple times already today, and there's been some disagreement, which I always like to hear, around like, will it take a lot of jobs? Here in the U.S. in the last election cycle, we had Andrew Yang, and that was like his big campaign is for the basic income, just because AI and robotics were taking so many jobs, and he was forecasting that would continue. What do we think there? So, I mean, we have some disagreement. I'm having a hard time understanding the argument why that would not be the case. So I don't know, Felix or who else was it that spoke against that?
So, I mean, I can jump in right here. So there is a fact, sure, that AI can replace some form of jobs out there. But I would also argue for that AI will bring in a lot of requirements for other jobs as well. For example, one thing that is a key factor here is leveraging the AI and actually interpreting its outputs, and also making sure that the AI is performing as it should, and also maintaining them are like core jobs that people will have to work with. They might not be applicable to the same demographic of the people that are losing their jobs, but it's definitely going to create more jobs out there. I know, for example, one thing that I was taught when I was in university about this is the whole movement that is digging into the transparency and interpretability of AI and machine learning models, just because they had this huge black box that was very unpredictable. For example, the Facebook AI, when it was supposed to identify different objects in the picture, and it was getting pictures of people of color, and it identified them as apes, for example, which was a huge dilemma there for a while. And that sparked the whole movement when it comes to governments, and when it comes to like AI-based decision making on a larger scale, to make sure that the AI could not be wrong or be biased in some case, or shape or form. That, on the other hand, also opens it up for a whole other topic of debatable discussion as well. Like, how can you make sure that an AI is correct or wrong? What is the ethics and morals? And just as a slight side note, for those who have not partaken in Codebreaker, me and Paul Turner, I see him listening here, we had this whole AI and philosophical discussion like 2 days back in the open VC inside of New Tokyo, which was a whole lot of fun. And we went on tangents regarding AI and conscience and all those things for, I think, 2 hours or something. But I'll hand it off to somebody else now as well, because I've been speaking for quite a while.
I think on Felix's point in the terms of creating new jobs, one of the things you'll still need is the old jobs, because a lot of the folks that are overseeing kind of the outputs from the AI will be senior developers in whatever field it may be, whether it's art, sound, code even. Those developers still need to train and actually do their job for 10, 15 years, whatever it is. So you still need the folks coming up in the same quantity, or maybe slightly less quantity through those ranks, to get to that kind of level of skill. Otherwise, you're just blindly trusting them, which when I say them, I mean AI and the outputs that they're giving, which I don't think is a healthy thing to do, and I don't think a lot of businesses will accept that. So I feel like you'll lose not as many jobs as you think, and that will probably be replaced by some of the jobs that Felix kind of mentioned, because you still need that training. You still need to end up with a senior developer of whatever field to be able to vet and ensure the outputs are correct. Like, you might obviously get the people that are now putting the prompts in that never become senior developers, which is a whole new field entirely, but you still need that person at the end of the day to make sure what is being output is correct, which requires 10 to 15 years of training.
I'm sure there are models out there that kind of try to predict where this is headed as far as number of jobs that will be lost, number of jobs that will be maintained or be created to maintain these technologies. Because I know I've heard people talk about automation and the results of that in the future. And usually people say, well, jobs are going to try kind of like migrate more to creative roles and service roles and things like that, if technologies are placing some of the blue collar jobs through automation. But we've been talking about AI and technology that's directly replacing some of even those creative roles. So it's kind of it's an interesting thought process to go down. And I wonder what sort of models out there we could look at to help predict some of these things. Because there are some dark places it could head towards where there literally aren't enough jobs for people because robots took them.
Like, just maybe kind of expanding on that. Like, I think the one thing is it's important to know like the language we're using when we say jobs, because I think that gets very charged, especially in like political terms, right? In terms of like, is a job being removed? So rather than using the word jobs, the way I look at it is like roles and responsibilities. Like, and if we replace that, then and re-ask the question is like, will AI, i.e. any technical innovation, change the roles and responsibilities of the current market? The answer is always yes. That's what history has always shown us, right? It could be from the move from the factories, right? And realizing how to utilize better automation. And if you look at a lot of the factories today, visual inspectors are now AI, right? It's a visual AI tool looking at what is the output of what's actually coming out and then rejecting and accepting the right items for quality control. So what we saw is that essentially different roles and responsibilities are getting essentially eliminated, right, or replaced, right, in every advent of new technology. What the larger question remains is AI such a large leap that the erosion of roles is going to be way larger than we've ever expected? And will that then cause potential issues in regard to the job market, because it's going to take way longer to reskill, the amount of roles and responsibilities that are going to be potentially shifted or changed? And that's really where you'd want to have more of the conversation, because it's not really something we can debate. Technology, AI, eliminate roles and responsibilities because thousands of ways that we can know that. The question now is AI answers with that layer and responsibility there that potentially, again, this hits, it's a little of like human. Maybe a that's just like 1 and 5,000 AI except hedge fund, right? Yeah, realistically, it's going to be a better pair relationship, right? How do I use, for a traditional team, I usually need I need 4 senior devs, I need a front end, a back end, I need a DevOps, I need an artist, and I need, maybe a UI UX designer. Well, now with AI, that pod of like 8 or 10 people could maybe be reduced to 3 or 4 people more efficiently, right? And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of the smart operators and business builders leverage that accordingly in certain jobs, right? There's other hard skilled jobs that are not going to be replaced anytime in AI. So you always want to look at it in category. I think why this is scary for a lot of people is that it's already so good and they're surprised. So the question begs is, how much better is it going to be? And like, that's the other thing that we want to really understand is the amount of invested capital going into AI, not only in the West, but literally everywhere, right? Every country, every culture, right? East or West, is massive. It's literally the largest sector of investment consistently over the last 3 to 4 years. So we're going to have to expect innovations, right? Which I think is going to be exciting, but also daunting, which then goes to like, what are the concerns? And I think there's a lot more there, because I think surveillance stuff is a concern, and there's issues with and without AI for that already. And, I'm sure you're going to talk through about quite a few of them, but I think it's more about embracing how does AI improve lives and product building processes, and how do you build a relationship or a paired relationship between an AI output engine and, a human that is skilled at their specific labor department. And the teams that can figure that out the fastest are going to have some really interesting advantages.
I think we came to a really good point, because we're using the term jobs in a very general manner. Which type of jobs these technologies are taking away from us? Usually the jobs that we don't want to do, they're rudimentary jobs when you look at most technologies. Even concept art. Concept art is kind of like a passing phase of any production. You think of something, you sit down with the writer, with the producer, with the director or whatever, and you imagine something, and then just putting it on paper and getting it right is actually is a stepping stone for you to move to the next phase. I did some classical animation back in the day, and doing the animation part requires human intelligence, and it's great fun. But after you do the sketches for the animation, the cleanup part is just like torture, and it takes days, and it's a big part of the cost. And if I have to compare this to 3D animation again, the same concern happened with 3D animation. Classical animators were like, all right, our jobs is going away. But when you look back in the day, there were like maybe 3-5 big studios that were creating good quality animation, and Disney was the most prominent one, maybe Warner Bros. And I don't know, a couple of others. Today we have like 10-20 big companies that are producing almost Pixar quality animation, and each feature film is hiring like 400 people. So these jobs just changed. They didn't shrink. New people actually started doing these jobs because back in the day, if you couldn't draw or paint, you couldn't work in animation. Right now, you can code, you can model in a 3D software, you can do a lot of stuff. So even artistic people who couldn't draw right now are doing these jobs. And they didn't shrink. The studios grew, and the people who work for those studios grew as well.
It would be good to end we're getting close to ending. We want to keep these pretty concise. It'd be good to, end on a nice upbeat note. So I'm thinking, we just heard some tweets from Neo Tokyo founder Becker earlier this week, where he was noting that, he doesn't see a scenario where AI doesn't wipe out all of humanity in the next 10 years. This is something that's been huge in science fiction, and a lot of those technologies that were in these 80s movies like Terminator and whatnot are actually like coming to manifest now. So I'd just like to hear, do people agree that there is like some kind of really serious danger of AI like wiping out humanity or doing some kind of apocalyptic events? Or is that more fiction and there's things in place to keep that from happening?
I can give more of like, I think a one layer level answer below that. I think 100% there are real issues with AI technology, right? Because AI is always based off the models that you feed it. So the question you have to ask is, who are the people who are curating the models, right? Because again, that is really what's going to then curate our life and our output here. And in a lot of these cases, it's just 2 or 3 people who have a overt influence on how that model creates inputs and delivers outputs to users. And with that kind of power, it can be used for influencing certain narratives, influencing certain thought processes, influencing certain thinking. And that's a real fear, right? And the way you almost want to bucket all these other fears, like surveillance, has been a huge issue for AI. Right, like I know people get worried about Lensa asking you for like profile pictures and stuff like that, but hilariously, all that stuff is scrapable. Everyone scrapes your Twitter pictures. Everyone scraped your Facebook pictures. Everyone scrapes any type of network that they have any possibility of access to that's been grabbed. And then, do you know how many public cameras and access feeds you could use right now around the world at any moment? Hundreds of thousands of cameras, right? Like a lot of that stuff is already real issues today. But now what you're going to see is these AI models, like in using surveillance, right? The question just becomes like the whole, idea of, are we being watched? And that's a real issue. And especially we're seeing that applied in certain countries in different ways. And we want to be aware of that too. In the end, the way I look at it is I don't see AI like being overlords to take over us. Like I think that is more a really fun storyline, i.e. like Westworld, fucking amazing show. Please go check that out. Really interesting to kind of see like what that could look like. But we don't get to that point, in my opinion, right now. What the more focus on is, what do bad actors do with great AI technology? What do bad influencers who are early, again, in this space utilize and point to the AI due to their personal ideology? This is the largest concern. And the truth is, almost every major government is behind and slow at enforcing this and understanding this by 10 or 20 years. We know this. We're in crypto, and I'm in the US. Man, trying to actually see our government understand crypto is hilariously bad, right? And it's only going to be the same for AI as well. So again, that's where I see more of the problem sets. Even though I'm a huge believer in AI, I am just as fearful of a lot of these downside scenarios that could really impact humanity in a negative way.
Anyone else have some thoughts on that? I know Elon Musk has pointed to it as one of the major dangers. That's why he's always wanted to keep things open source. feeling like if this technology gets exclusive to one group or one government, that could be extremely dangerous as well. That's always a point that he made. I've heard.
You got it.
Okay. I just noticed we lost Nick as well. Oh, he's back. Perfect. So just to tie back to what Nick said as well, bad actors in general, I feel like, sure, the bigger folks, influencers there as well is definitely one of the big problems. But another one is also the malicious actors out there that are actually trying to act as the influencers out there. Because, for example, crypto Twitter or crypto YouTube is one of those issues where there's a lot of people impersonating ZZ or Elon Musk or all the people with AI, with deep fakes and deep fake videos, where they're quoting certain products. And believe it or not, they're in the uncanny valley, but people fall for them and they lose so much money just because other people are trying to convince the random individual that, oh, my role model is actually very interested in this as well, which is one thing that ticks me off the most. Sure, there might be some of the bigger influencers out there that are being maybe malicious to some extent, but I also think that they are innovative and bring forward the space, which always helps with the evolution of AI and technology in general, right? The ambitious people are the ones who bring everything forward.
Yeah, I think it's becoming a lot more real, especially with tools like ChatGPT. It's like AI has kind of been a conceptual thing for people that aren't directly working with the technology, but now we're seeing these tools that literally are indistinguishable from humans, and so it's like this exponential curve of it's actually a real thing. It's something we have to worry about, and we can utilize, but also obviously the worries and the potential dangers that we've been chatting about. Yeah, but that's kind of my closing thought. Zehi, were you gonna say something?
I was just going to pass it to Francis for his closing thoughts on this whole subject.
Yeah, I think especially with kind of the topic of weaponizing and then potentially becoming bad actors, as someone from the defense industry initially, with defense being the thing that kind of pushes forward most innovations in life, I feel like it's only inevitable that AI kind of ends up doing something extremely negative to the world, whether it's through our lack of understanding or kind of over willingness to incorporate into things. I think the kind of jobs discussion before is one of the things that will potentially massively be in effect, but there's also I think Google is working on various AI programs that can now write stronger versions of AI programs. Like if you could think in 10 years in the future, that could get pretty fucking out of hand with the potential for it to become malicious based on malicious actors, which exist everywhere. So yeah, I think AI is something that isn't a force for good if it isn't regulated properly. And obviously someone mentioned before that we're like 20 years behind in regulation, which I think needs to kind of come very quick. And it's very difficult to do that because there's no one that truly understands what's going on who's making these regulations. Obviously they're advising, but there's a lot of money in these AI solutions. There's a lot of immediate cost savings that have huge detrimental effects way down the line. And I think things are probably going to get bad before they get better is kind of the summary that I'd give.
How about you, Saint? Get your hand up there.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, as you guys were closing, man, really appreciate you guys having this conversation. Really awesome to kind of hear from all the other builders here and just kind of creators, because I think just having these active conversations kind of spur discussion. So appreciate you guys hosting this as well. And just like a small little like task for any of the Lost Realms community members, because I do owe them something here. Just the password phrase for the secret chamber is Kyoto, Kyoto. For those of you who are following along, we just have giveaways for kind of those who participate. So I like to give them another password or phrase for that. So yeah, it's Kyoto, Kyoto. Thanks so much for having us, guys. Really appreciate it. Would love to be able to be part of these conversations in the future too.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. And I just wanted to wrap up real quick by giving a shout out to the Codebreaker event that we're hosting right now. It did start on Saturday, so anyone joining now is a little bit behind the curve, but it's still not too late to get in. Becker posted some more details about it on his Twitter today that Neo Tokyo retweeted. Basically, the grand prize is our 4th rarest NFT in the whole Neo Tokyo collection, significant value there, and then there's other prizes for other placements as well. But there's 6 Codex tweets up right now from Neo Tokyo. Those are the main riddles for phase 1, and then phase 2 is about to start here. So you're not out of the game if you haven't joined in yet, but the server's been hopping the past week. We've had a few hundred people in VC almost 24/7 trying to solve this thing. So it's been a lot of fun on the back end for me, because I helped plan the whole thing to see it all unfold. But check that out if you're interested in earning some cool prizes and collaborating with others to solve some fun riddles. Yeah, with that, I think we'll end it for this week. Thank you, Jeff, Citizen, for coming up here, for Felix and Zehi for joining me.
Yeah, I just want to put it out there. There's a few people that had their hands up, and we are going to probably do a follow-up space through Neo Tokyo News on AI art. We've already been talking. I saw Kyle Shannon was in the audience. He's got a cool project that he's working on, and he's a citizen. So we'll be featuring him and a few other people. If anybody wants to get involved in that or to get a chance to speak today, you can reach out to me, Zehi, or to Neo Tokyo News, and we'll let you know when that happens. Otherwise, right here, Citizens, this Interlinked podcast Twitter space will continue next week, same time.